Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg, and today we have Justin Addeo. Welcome back to the Willy Bragg Show. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So, um, let's see. This is the first time you've been here with this is now down over 1,000 subs. So, gonna slowly climb up to 2,000. But before I do that, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Oh, well, my name is Justin Addeo. I am 53. I'm originally from Long Island, but I've lived here in Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, for the last decade with my fiance. And well, I've have a kind of a resume of shit disturbing with going to demonstrations over the years since I was young, in my 20s and up till now, and you know now I just spend my time mostly being on Facebook arguing with right-wing trolls, I'd say.
Yeah, we have actually argued with quite a few right wing trolls over the years. Me and you and a couple other people that we both mutually know.
Yeah.
We have actually we've known each other quite a few years. So yeah, and I've done my fair share of going to protests and all that. Amazing what working graveyard shift will do to you, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I do right now. I work a graveyard shift as a security guard at a Christian mental health facility.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Though I gotta say, on the overnight shift, it's pretty quiet as opposed to, say, second shift, which is actually absolutely batshit insane. In terms of having, but fortunately it's quieter. I'd say 9 times out of 10, not much goes on, but watch out for that 10th time.
Oh, I know. I work graveyard shift and it's been pretty quiet over the years, but I got assaulted once working graveyard shift a long time ago. I'm talking about like back in 2005. And so it can be, it can be quite traumatic when you get attacked. So,
well, yeah, I mean, being a security guard, we're kind of paid to be attacked. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's like, because when there's, often you'll have patients who don't want to take medicine or what have you. So you come down there, some of them are not in the best mood, and some of them are very strong. I'll just say that much.
Wow. Well, the way I look at it is I got about 5 years, 3 weeks before I retire. So,
yeah, I feel you're counting it down.
Yeah, I am counting it down. You say you're 53, and I knew that, but I joked about it one time, but I was serious. When you turned 50, I remember commenting on Facebook. I said, "There you are. You turned 50, and I'm in my early to mid 50s, and look, we both look better than Alex Jones."
Well, yeah, that's kind of a low bar. I mean, that's what happens when you just live the life of just being like a professional angry man.
The guy was born 1974, and he looked like he was born like 1960. He looks like he's about to turn. I don't know. It looks like he looks like he's in his mid 60s. He does not look like he doesn't look like he just turned 50.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Alex Jones, before like Fox News got big, was just like a local crank, in Texas, like underground circuits and stuff like that. He just was, like he is now, basically, but like even no one, I don't think anyone saw it coming that he was going to become like as big as he is. If you went to any of like the kind of like conspiracy fans who were early Alex Jones, I don't think any of them would have thought he would have turned out this way, as big as he is.
actually, something very interesting about Alex Jones is that 20 years ago, when I first heard of him, he ironically had a shared audience with the Young Turks at that time.
Mm,
Isn't that weird?
yeah. No, it is weird. I remember, I what I remember indirectly about Alex Jones was that speaking about like demonstrations I've been to, back in 1999, I was at the World Trade Organization, Battle of Seattle demonstration and everything. And I remember, like, the internet was brand new at that point, really, only a few years old. Was it really that anyone was hooked up to, the World Wide Web? At
Oh
any
yeah,
rate, I remember going over all the different videos about people commenting on it and coming to Alex Jones and him going on about how, that the global elites were sparking the demonstrations. That the left coast, uh, being thugs were it's just the same line they have in everything, like back during BLM, saying that Antifa was like, some nefarious, global elite were in control of them, and Soros or whomever. But it was like literally he said the same thing all the way back in 1999 when I was, involved in the anti-globalization movement. That you heard now. They're really not very original. They say the same damn thing over and over.
Well, speaking of Antifa, just so the people in Washington D.C. would know, I am the worldwide head leader of Antifa.
Well, it's funny. It's like having been going to, once again, seeing how things have evolved. Before it was Antifa, I remember what they reminded me of immediately was when I was in the anti-globalization movement and going to like demonstrations in Seattle and Washington and other places. Was there was this thing called the Black Bloc, and the Black Bloc were like basically similar to Antifa. Had like the whole like face mask and black
They were
thing.
more anarchists, though.
Yeah, they were more anarchists. They basically would just like, I remember like when I was in Seattle during the, I mean, it's funny, you see all the demonstrations that are going on in Minnesota, and it very much reminded me of that like few days in Seattle during, when where the cops came out looking like RoboCops, like in just full riot gear, shooting off tear gas and concussion grenades and pepper spray and trudgeons. It was crazy. At any rate, the point being, I remember Black Bloc were doing things like, breaking the windows of like Nike Town and Starbucks and McDonald's, and basically anything that was a symbol of corporate, like hegemony, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I remember when I was in Charlotte in 2000. We went to a May Day. We went to a May Day gathering. I remember there was the Black Bloc was out there too. Nothing so dramatic with them though. But what we saw were people who were dressed like anti-globalist type left-wing protesters recording license plates in the parking lot.
It's so funny because I remember for like a good 3-year block, that was the big thing was from 1999 to 2001. Basically, the end of that entire, it was like that was the left wing that was the left wing like resistance at one time, was the counter globalization movement, and then literally overnight it fell apart with 9/11.
I remember that very well because that time I felt like it was like I almost felt like we were in the cusp of seeing a militant labor movement of the 1930s New Deal style at that time. I felt like we were kind of like within the grasp of it. And then 9/11 happened. And of course, we have to oppose the war and the surveillance state and all that. We needed to oppose that. And unfortunately, that's still a problem. But,
Well, when you think about it, right, because you had like this renewed labor movement, which was linking up with third world movements like the Zapatistas and the all these other, like, because the whole in the 80s they used to have things called IMF riots, where like there were every time these international financiers from the World Bank and the IMF would go into these countries, they'd make them, have extreme austerity programs in exchange for, like, getting more loans. They would take out, because during the 80s you had Reagan and monetarism, and you had like the price of oil going up. So these countries were taking out who were developing nations were taking out lots of loans from the IMF and World Bank. And then, of course, who pays the piper calls the tunes. And also what happens is the world, World Bank and IMF would come into these countries and say, listen, right now the interest is larger than the principal, just pure usury, right? The interest is larger than the principal. The only way you're going to get a penny more from us is if you roll back your welfare programs, you devalue your currency, you give all your resources over to transnational corporations, basically neocolonialism, without having to fire a shot, without having to send a single Marine. The banks just came in and totally, raped these countries, these developing, global South countries. So, you had things like IMF riots. And this led up into the 90s, with you had the fall of the Soviet Union. So of course, there was this triumphalism, this corporate global triumphalism that now, we can buy out China, and we've vanquished Russia. So, it's the end of history. Capitalism and liberal democracy won, and, fuck everybody else. We're just gonna, it's going to be one big, bonanza for transnational, capitalism and everything. So that's led to the anti-globalization movement by the end of the 90s. It didn't stop. History did not end. The fall of the Soviet Union did not stop, the resistance worldwide. In fact, it only emboldened it. And today, the hypocrisy, the absolute gall of saying that China is going to debt trap these countries is beyond, like, insane. Do you know debt trap? Do you know how much abject poverty and famines and what have you were created by the loan sharking of IMF and World Bank and other, Western international financiers? There's no room to talk. It's not even close. Not even close.
Not even close, because China, now I used to, as I used to have this kind of a revisionist cold. I was never a hawk, but I sort of flirted with a Cold Warrior kind of view of the world of the left that I no longer adhere to, because capitalism is the problem. Capitalism is the problem. Any flaws that existed, let's say, in the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc countries and around the world with that sort of government, it was really the fault of the United States. It was a fault because of capitalism. Capitalism basically declare war on any movement that actually tries to liberate people. So any problems I have, let's say, with civil liberties in the Soviet Union or what have you, well, this wouldn't have taken place had the United States not become bullies. Look at what the United States is doing it currently with Cuba right now.
I was going to bring up Cuba, definitely.
I've always, even in my revisionist days, I was like, why the fuck are you picking on Cuba? I mean, it's ridiculous. They are not a threat to anyone. I mean, when the United States sent
It's the threat of a
bombs,
good model. It's the threat of an alternative model that works
yeah,
and that's the threat. It's the threat that socialism doesn't just fall apart on its own. It has to be like knocked over. It has to be, like, you have to play dirty in order for it to fail, because otherwise it doesn't fail. It does the opposite. It thrives.
yeah,
But just to get back to something I was saying, like to talk about like how in the beginning, like in the 90s, when I first got into activism, the big thing that all the elites would talk about is neoliberalism, this idea that we're going to cut down all the borders to capital investment. That's going to be a global free market, just, no more regulations, nothing. Well, it's funny what happens. It's funny what happens in another 20, what was it, not 20, 30 years from then. What we see now is that you see the opposite things going on, really, with tariffs. And, it's gone into this protectionist mode. And they're the only reason that possibly is because all these nations that are like, quote unquote, the enemies of the U.S., like China and Russia and what have you, they did not disappear. They did not go away. They did not fall into some kind of vassal state orbit of the U.S. In fact, they became economically prosperous by doing the exact opposite of what we wanted them to do. Yes, they embraced market reforms, but in such a way that they were completely used to like empower the socialist central planning, say, of China and what have you. So now what you see is we gone from this sort of triumphal, the U.S. Corporately have now gone, that used to be the rhetoric of free trade and this triumphalism of the free market will prevail and no more regulations and no more state intervention. Well, now you see where it's completely retreated. It's backfired on them, and now they have Trump in power, who's uses tariffs as a means to like to punish anyone who stands up. So they've gone in a space of what I've seen from when I was in my 20s, 30 years ago, from being this sort of gleeful, optimistic, the free market will prevail, to this reactionary tariff, like imposing tyrant, that where it's just the opposite. It's they gone from the opposite. It's no longer the idea that free market capitalism will be the savior. It's now the exact opposite. The U.S. has to impose tariffs and other forms of harsh punitive regulations on any of these other nations that developed wonderfully, beautifully, to the point that China's the second strongest economy worldwide.
And when it comes to tariffs, what I don't like what Trump did with tariffs is Trump is going to be temporary. This Trumpian fascism that we're under right now, and I use my terms correctly. It's objectively fascism that he's imposing. There will be a time that the corrupt and Democrats they're going to go and clean house in November, and Trump will be weakened. I was telling Dwight Welch, that's online on Facebook. Me and him were talking about this today. We think it's going to be a repeat of 2006 with Bush and Cheney. They're going to be temporarily weakened, Trump, and he'll have his hands tied, just a little bit tied down, and then in 2028, Vance will be defeated by some candidate. We don't know who that candidate will be at this point. Some people think it's going to be Gavin Newsom. I just think it's too early to tell, but there's probably somebody out there that we don't even know that's going to run. That's usually what happens. But I think that we're going to see, and that liberals come back in doing what they do best, disappointing, and I just think it's just going to be a rinse and repeat of the last 20 years, is what I predict.
Yeah.
But Trump used tariffs in a way that's immature. I mean, I'm kind of a protectionist in a lot of ways. I want to protect these factories and all that, these union jobs. He doesn't. He does it because he has a temper tantrum, because he's a little man child.
Well, and also, I just feel like at this point, it's the handwriting is on the wall, is that we have reached the end, literally the end of U.S. global hegemony. This is the beginning of the end. They have nothing left. They have no tricks left up their sleeve at this point. When they've gotten to the point where, look, there was a time when, and not that long ago, really, like where the corporate elite would always put in some professional political politician into power to keep things on an even keel, like you see with Biden or Obama or even Bush to a certain extent. They would leave the administrative aspects of a liberal democracy to a class of political professional politicians. Well, they've now put one of their own into power, which is Trump. Trump is literally, there's no difference between a politician and a businessman there. They're one in the same thing. It used to be the business elite would leave the organizing of the political state to the politician, who are under their, obviously are not going to stray far from their own, class interests. But at least they had a sense of having to maintain a balance, an even balance. Now they just have a complete, like you said, man child who's one of their own in power. I think that's a sign of the times, really. I feel like the U.S. global elite just are in full panic mode, that you have things like China and Russia creating this BRICS, which is which is totally is poised to undermine the petrodollar. I just think at this point they're just in complete panic mode. They have nothing else. They have no clue as to what they're going to do next. You can't really see the liberals in the Democratic Party are like the consummate professional, career politicians. They're the consummate, bullshit artists, really. You know what I mean? To where they run a great show of of keeping a balancing act between, pretending to give a shit about the public sector and, and corporate interest, right?
They're the good cops.
Yeah, they're very good at doing what they do. But the thing is that the global elite are now running up against a world in which the U.S. is no longer center stage. They can't even give token amount of anything to the public sphere, anything that's going to be a check, even a mild check on their power. So I don't know what's going to happen with the Democrats. The Democrats are at an impasse. They can't afford to put a Sanders or an AOC or even someone like a Mamdani into the federal government. They can't afford to put them because that will alienate the same patrons who are the patrons of the Republican Party.
Of course.
They're corporate. They can't do it. But on the other hand, those are the only ones anyone will vote in great numbers for. So they're at an impasse on what the candidates are the only ones that anyone is excited to vote for. They can't do because their patrons won't let them do it. So I don't know what the future of the Democratic Party is, but it's bleak. It's very bleak.
It is bleak. And I saw the writing on the wall with Bill Clinton in the 1990s when I first heard of the Democratic Leadership Council. And I know some people get tired of me saying DLC, Democratic Leadership Council, but that was the Reagan. That's when they Reaganized that fucking party. And the Democratic Party prior to that was not exactly a Labor Party. It was not a Social Democratic Party, but it played a role as one in the U.S. It doesn't even do that anymore.
Right, and right, because simply put, you know, an Obama or a Biden or a Clinton, really, these aren't, and these are in the same family as a Jeb Bush or a or a Mitt Romney. They're not really any different than moderate Republicans. You look, what do you call it, the ACA, the Obamacare? That was Romney care. That was
Heritage
literally
Foundation.
Romney care before it was. They're not really what used to be moderate Republicans, because they don't really exist anymore. There was an incomplete coup d'état by a far right fanatical movement, which is MAGA. See, this is just it. See, okay, I just said how the Democrats are at an impasse. But what will happen when the MAGA movement runs its course? Once Trump's out, what will happen to the Republican Party? That's going to just completely, the only thing holding it together is this fanatical, hateful ideology that has no other thing but to demonize whole portions of the popularity and send out jackbooted thugs to suppress them. That's all they have going for them. It's a great strategy for their base. It's like red meat. It's what keeps them politically relevant. But what happens when Trump's gone? What happens when the MAGA movement runs its course? Everything's going to fall. So on one hand, you have this moribund Democratic Party that's at an impasse. They can't put any of their left-wing candidates into power because that will alienate their corporate patrons. And on the other hand, once MAGA's out of the way and once Trump's gone, the Republicans are going to be also in the same predicament where they're just going to have factionalized infighting. They're just going to go back to everyone scrambling for the whatever's left over, from this criminal venture that is the Trump administration. So you're going to have two parties that are in disarray. Like, who is even going to be voted for? Like, maybe this is the time for a third party movement, because both parties are on the verge of completely imploding on themselves.
Well, here's the thing about electoral politics. I used to think, very early on, I used to think the Democratic Party, with all its flaws, before even a DLC came into my mind, because I voted for Bill Clinton in 1992. I'm sorry I did, but I did. But
we all have our moments, man.
Yeah, but there's Snipe Hunter will appreciate what I'm about to say. The two biggest regrets I've ever had in my life as far as voting were named Bill Clinton, and then Bill Geen, who's the head of Americans for ALIPAC, Americans for Legal Immigration. I don't know if you ever heard of that group. They're horrible. He went from a left-wing person in the College Democrats to being this alt-right figure today. So, and so anyway, I'm getting beside myself. The Democratic Party, I thought it was where it was at, and then I was all into the third party movement. Bernie Sanders kind of brought me back into the Democratic Party briefly in the last decade between 2016 2020, because, as you know, I was the original Bernie bro. And with the Bernie movement dead, it's like, well, I could vote Green or some other left-wing third party, or not give a shit, because there was nothing that Trump had to offer, nor Kamala Harris had to offer in 2024. Neither of them offered me anything.
Yeah. Well, the Sanders movement, which I did support to the extent that, I thought maybe there might have been a fleeting, a snowball's chance in hell that maybe they might have, but, of course, that was very willfully naive on my part, because I should have known better. Really, I should have not gotten blinded by this moment of mass optimism, because they did exactly what, you really, when you rationally think about, they would have done. They sandbagged him in the middle of the, they all ganged up on him, and in the middle of the primaries, and made sure that he didn't have a chance. And they took Biden from last place and put him into first. I've never seen such a group project to take a loser of a candidate and put him into a position of power. They must have really got like the, what do you call it, like the ones who were Buttigieg and Klobuchar and the other ones who were on at the time must have really got some kind of sweetheart deal for what they did to by sandbagging Sanders and artificially pushing forward Biden, because I've never seen such an immediate group mind response to an outside threat in my life.
Obama made the phone call, and that's what happened. And when John Lewis died during the memorial, Bill Clinton said it to James Clyburn. He said that he was glad that measures were made to step in. He said that live. And if the glad measures made to step in, basically to stop Sanders. I was short circuiting it at that. I was angry as I could be. I'm still angry to this day.
Well, actually, what Sanders kind of reminded me was the Democratic Party's version, the grassroots, base of the Democratic Party's version of, Nader. Back in 2000, that was when I remember getting on board, was when Nader and everything like that back in 2000, when he was and that was it was so funny. There was you really felt like there was so much that could have been accomplished in 2000, and 2001 happened, and it was everything fell to complete pieces, like we were just saying before. And just to make it clear, that really was the beginning of the end, was 2001, because you see it right now with ICE and DHS. That was all the product of the Bush era, right after 9/11. That was all created as this PNAC, this Project for a New American Century. You could see it right at that point with Bush getting, creating this new, very foreboding thing called the Department of Homeland Security. I remember when I saw that on TV. I was at work at a ground round. I was in college at the time. Again, I'd returned to college, but and looking at it and seeing this, and I was just, holy crap, what is the Department of Homeland Security? This sounds like some dystopian, fascistic sounding, you have the CIA and the FBI. Why do you need this new, very, that was the beginning. I'd say that's the beginning. Everything that started at that point is everything that up to what you're seeing now started at that point. It's just this thing of turning the U.S. into this fortress state of internal, as we're destroying countries on the outside, citizens. And at the time, of course, it was Muslim citizens it's the same thing you see now, being kidnapped off the street without due process and put into Guantanamo Bay for over a decade, without any kind of, not even just without any trial, but any formal charges. It was just this nebulous war on terror. They were, guilty of simply being Muslim Americans. And they were doing this, and you see this right now. I mean, everything that Trump is doing it was started by Bush. really.
Absolutely. That's why I said George W. Bush was one of the worst. I still say that George W. Bush was one of the worst presidents we ever had. And the fascism of Trump just wasn't created on a vacuum. It was a bipartisan effort. Um, and here's the thing. I mean, during Biden's administration, they tried to set up this disinformation governance board, what they call a Ministry of Truth, which I was glad to see defeated. And the Republicans are going crazy and nuts over it. They were right for the wrong reasons. They were opposed to it because they were worried that was going to turn on them. But I can guarantee you, if that thing would have stayed intact, and Trump would have gotten elected, he wouldn't have dismantled that. He would have been doubling down, using this Ministry of Truth to shut down not just mainstream media, but alternative voices. He sure as hell would, because I mean, Trump
I
just
never
an
in my life.
authoritarian little child.
Yeah, I am actually kind of like I didn't think there could have been a regime or a administration that would ever have been further right than George Bush Jr. I didn't think it could possibly happen. And then MAGA came along.
Well,
this whole
MAGA
you
too. MAGA
I did
won.
not think, and of course the precedent to this is the Tea Party sort of like built up the entire, kind of built up steam that will eventually mutated into, make America great again. And you had the whole, cult of personality that is Trump and everything. A lot of these right wing, like right wingers wanted to do heritage, foundation sort of, hatchet job on the welfare state, like Reagan and of course the Bushes and they never went as far as this. Never went and that's great. That's insane. It's insane that we're even further to the right than any of that. We're even further to the right than any of that. And not only just that, it's just that I can say at least this for the neocons, they were strategists in the sense of being professional politicians that I'm talking about before, like with the Democrats. Yes, they were, like just, like proto-fascists like the MAGAs are, but they at least were professional politicians. They knew how to run a state, even if it was, doing things like crashing the economy, like they did with the banks and everything like that. At least they were professional politicians. You think they would have gotten rid of U.S. aid, all the soft power? Yes, they were big into shock and awe and all the other, imperialist muscle flexing stuff. But I think, George Bush Jr. got all his stuff from his very genteel George Bush Sr. father, who was CIA operative and all that, that I don't think he would have gotten rid of, they wouldn't have ever gotten rid of soft power. They understood that you have to have at least a humanitarian facade and things you do. This person that we have in power right doesn't even understand that, because he can't even think in terms of strategically like soft power, because he's so crass, he's so utterly like knuckle dragging. He doesn't understand that there's a place for using propaganda, to your advantage, where you look at least like you have good intentions. He doesn't care if he looks like he has good intentions. Like he'll just come out and say the reason we're going to Venezuela is to take their oil. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't even care to lie. He's too lazy. He's too arrogant and full of his own to actually lie about at least with professional politicians like neocons and they understand like finessing. They understand, how to finesse, how to what do you call it?
Public relations.
Yeah, they understand public relations. They understand you know, stuff like that. So they they're once again like professional politicians. Trump is like the opposite of, it's funny. I was thinking of this the other day. I was talking to my fiance. Trump is essentially just a landlord when you get down to it. He has the mentality of a landlord. Everything about him is it could, he's real estate. We have a landlord in power, and it's so obvious that that's what he's doing with ICE right now. Look, what does a landlord do? They try to get in as many. They try to have a high turnover rate of tenants, so they can keep the rent high and the costs low, right? So they just keep doing that. That's what ICE essentially is doing. See, it's ironic because a lot of these people think, oh, these immigrants are coming in, they're taking our jobs, they're lowering our wages. No, the longer immigrants stay here in a country, the more they have a path to becoming citizens. Wages start going up because they start doing things like joining unions, voting for, labor reform. You see it every time, like the 8-hour work week back in like the 18, that all came from things like the immigrants who were coming here and were the first to strike for the 8-hour day. They've done, all he's doing, and ironically this is when he's getting rid of like the old tenants. That's essentially what ICE is doing, is getting rid of the old tenants, the old the immigrants who have been here long enough. It's just setting up so that you can have a fresh new do you think they're ever not going to come in from the border? I mean, he said he can bullshit too. I mean, he bullshitted us about the wall, that he was going to have a wall. That never fucking happened. It never happened. He didn't make Mexico, they just completely forgot about that fact because these people are brainwashed fanatics. They forgot about the fact that he completely dicked them over. Do you think that they're going to stop people from coming in at the border? That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is he's just using ICE to get rid of all these new immigrants who are on their path to becoming, like, because most of them are just have things like expired visas, right? They're not even like here illegally in the sense that they came in over the border. The ones they're attacking, that's why they're outside of courtrooms. That's why they're kidnapping people outside. These are people who are in the middle of a big bureaucratic morass, trying to get their papers straight, trying to get their their visas renewed, and ICE is just out there like these fucking jackals, these predators waiting to pounce on them, to keep them from doing that, to keep them from becoming fully legal, to keep them from becoming citizens. They don't want them to become citizens, because the minute they become citizens, that's the minute that they start doing things like joining unions. They start pushing the Democratic Party to the left. They don't want that. They even say that too. They don't want these people because they're going to vote Democrat anyway. They're not like shy about it. So so all this ICE raids are doing are getting rid of these people who are on the verge of becoming citizens, so they can set up so this way a fresh new batch of completely desperate actual ones who will work for shitty wages and won't open their mouths so they don't get deported, won't they're doing is getting rid of the immigrants who have a possibility of becoming citizens, for ones who are just going to be terrorized by being deported and will take low paying jobs. So it's really the opposite things going on. These idiots who support Trump don't even understand that what he's doing, that he's just setting up so that immigrants, the very immigrants that they're afraid will bring down wages, will come in. He's very clever on that level.
You're absolutely right. And to add to that, thing about it is that that the people he's rounding up with ICE. I mean, if you're going to say going after actual gangs or whatever, that's one thing. But we don't see gangs with tattoos being sent back to whatever. We're seeing people who are dishwashers. We're seeing people who work in restaurants. We're seeing people who work in hotels and the various
working class people.
Working class people. We do not see, these drug cartel people that are supposedly terrorizing everybody. I mean, and so there is that. And
yeah,
you're right. You're right about the landlord tendency.
It's the mentality, and there's a very good reason why they don't go after actual gang members. That they'll shoot you. It's like one thing I learned from going to these demonstrations, what the cops only go after nonviolent protesters. They don't go after the protesters who are breaking windows, because those people actually fight back. The cops will only brutalize nonviolent protesters because they won't fight back. It's the same thing with ICE. Do you think ICE is going to go after anyone who will actually shoot back at them? Anyone who will actually do violence to them? Of course not. They take the lowest hanging fruit. They take the lowest hanging fruit, which is, like I said, people who are, going to their court hearing, or children outside the school. These people have no fucking shame. They're just disgusting people. Could you imagine that, waiting outside of school for some kid to come out? Like, what kind of man are you? Jesus, I would have nothing but self-loathing if my job was to hang outside of schools and kidnap kids. You know what I mean? Or go to a Target and grab anyone who looks brown. I mean, Jesus, these people are they have no shame. They're lower than cops. I never thought there would be another group of law enforcement. Well, very, very loosely, I'll call them law enforcement, that would make cops look good. Oh my God!
Even the cops don't like them.
Yeah, they actually make the police look good. This is a big moment for the police, like PR, to come in and be like, hey, look, I know you've given us all this trouble in the past about George Floyd and during BLM, but now this is the cops' big moment to be the good cops, as opposed to the bad cops that are ICE. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
they could look like Adam 12 again or something.
Right. I mean, it's wild. They're just like that they've actually, and it's just completely transparent that this is not just about picking the low hanging fruit of the most vulnerable working class immigrants. This is also purely political theater and very nasty retribution against political rivals in blue states, just a way to to bully, and then him saying he wants the voter rolls. I mean, can you be more transparent as to what your your motives are? This is purely political strong arming and theater, and it's unlike anything I've seen before. I've seen some bad shit before, and believe me, the neocons were absolutely the worst of the worst. But I've never seen anything like this. Something so transparently brutish and bullying, and I've never seen it be. It's crazy. I've never seen something.
It is performative. They love it. That's why he does it for his base. He doesn't really have an ideology.
Yeah.
He does it because he knows he's an entertainer. He knows what that base likes, and so he throws the red meat at him. This is
right.
Right.
He's the political equivalent of the WWF. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's definitely and the kind of people he attracts are that's what their limited cognitive ability can absorb. That's it. They have no other ability to all their idea is to have this performative cruelty against the liberals they hate, and that's it. That's the entire basis of their ideology, is to get back at, to and to humiliate their liberal and left rivals. That's it. There's nothing else to it. If you ask them really what are the policies that you find the most, they might say immigration reform, but that's about it, because it just feeds into that sadistic impulse of punishing,
Right.
those who that they think are like the an existential threat, or the bad guys or whatever, the ones who have humiliated them as white American working class people. They are really petty bourgeois. A lot of these people aren't working class. So it's a really kind of a lot of the people who actually voted for Trump aren't even like, they're definitely, a lot of them are small business owners and up in middle to upper middle class. I know a lot of people like to point out the trailer trash faction of it. And yes, it exists, but really, do trailer trash have the time to go to January 6th? You know what I'm saying? And like, most of those people had money that were there at like the Capitol. Most of them had the time and money to go and stage a kind of postmodern coup d'état, at the Capitol.
Oh,
They
according
were.
to some people, it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa pretending to be Trump supporters to make them all look bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's right. I know. It's just like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that uh, these are uh, 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 the people who are, what do you call it? His constituency maybe were, a generation ago, came from blue collar roots, but now they have a little more money. They have a little more invested. That's why they were so upset about, like, during COVID, the shutting down of small businesses. A lot of them are petty bourgeois types, that make up the ranks of fascist movements, really, when you get down to it. Um, um, and their entire ideology is just centered around punishing those they think are responsible for getting in the way of them moving up in the world. That's it. Whether it's liberals with their regulation and welfare state, or immigrants who are going to take their jobs, like, who's going to take your job, like, like landscaping, or whatever you have, you know what I mean? So, you probably even are hiring immigrants too. Half these people are hypocrites. They probably even hire immigrants for their, but like, but they don't have much of, like, Trump. Trump is the Trump to them is who they want to be. He represents everything they want to be, a smarmy hustler who made it big. And his family is just that. You know what I mean? They're built. He's a billionaire and he came from wealth and everything, but they're like the scuzzy lower end of the elite, really, when you get down to it. That's why they made their money off of real estate and gambling and other shady fucking, grimy things. They weren't led into, like, he had to really try to petition to get into these clubs and everything, in New York. They did not want, no one wanted. He was like kind of the grubby he represented the grubby upwardly mobile, class of billionaires. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He definitely, and and he has all that kind of class resentment too. You can tell that, that he came from that kind of, like, where, he was the outsider amongst that he was the kind of families that were the grubby, upwardly mobile type that, were considered like déclassé, like nouveau riche type, as opposed to the old blue blood, who, once again, who are much more genteel, at least have like a sense of, civic responsibility and what have you, less crass, and definitely they see in Trump themselves. They are the same kind of grubby, upwardly mobile, crass type that, the only thing that's keeping them back is these kind of liberals who are born with a silver spoon in their mouth, who are going to give all the public money away to welfare cheats, and and are going to let in all these immigrants to flood the country, and replace white people, and it's this, you see it. This is exactly the kind of people that are like the make up the constituency of any fascist movement, is just the same kind. And they're always in the end just dolts, pawns to the same international financiers that they pretend to hate. You know what I mean? That they just blame it on the Jews or what have you, or you know what I mean? It's they always have, it's a politics of scapegoating. That's all it is. It's a politics of scapegoating. It's a politics of purity, of purifying the nation of outsiders and anyone that don't represent the white settler colonialists, that came in and cleared out the land of the natives and enslaved the Africans and kept all the that. And they generally had an animosity for the Northeast establishment. You know what I mean? That had this thing. These the kind of blue blood
Country
liberals.
club Episcopalian types.
Yes, right. Yeah, the blue blood. The general. They're colluding with the Jews probably, and to keep once again, the grubby, upwardly mobile, crass racist types. And I mean, they're an entirely different kind of racism. When you get to the elite level, it's more along the lines of just very well, keeping managing, kind of this sort of racial conflicts and stuff like that. But by buying off parts of the black or brown community, but at any rate, that's not what with MAGA. It's purely just a white nationalist movement to that's kind of proto-fascist, just on the verge of it. And you're seeing it with Trump right now. You're saying and once that's all over, once that's run its course, I don't know what's next. I don't know who's going to be next. Is it going to be Vance? Is it going to be Newsom? I mean, none of these people are viable on their own. You know what I'm saying? None of these people really have anything to offer, even their own constituency. Don't even, who. I feel like whoever's going to be the next president after Trump is just going to happen by default. You know what I mean? It's going to be it's just going to be one of the lowest turnout rates of any thing. It's just, I don't know. I'm not sure. And meanwhile, while things are crumbling politically internally, you have what's going on outside of the country, which is Russia and China and other nations that are poised to to displace U.S. global hegemony. I don't know. I don't know what's going to come next. Actually, I'm a little concerned because I feel like if the ruling class of this country truly feels threatened by its dominance worldwide and sees things falling apart internally, God help us. They have nuclear weapons.
Well, absolutely. Do you have any? I know you say you're going to be here for an hour. So.
Oh yeah. No, actually, I do got to go, and that's probably a good way to wrap it up. But
Yeah, I enjoyed this conversation. And yeah, thing about it is that we got we got a lot of work to do, and I don't think it'll be JD Vance. He's got the charisma of a potato, so just yeah, we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I don't know. I think there is a
We'll have
lot
a
of
Democrat in the
potential.
White House in
Personally, I'm
2028.
not completely a pessimist here. I think there's a lot of potential. What you saw on the streets of Minnesota was nothing short of inspirational and beautiful. Regular working class people showing up to stand out there in support of other working class people who are even worse off to them. You very rarely see that in the U.S. It's a beautiful thing when it
It is a
happens,
beautiful thing.
you know.
It is
So
beautiful.
don't give up hope. I mean, I see a lot of hope right now that it can happen. It's just there are a lot of people who really want change, who really want things to be better, and really are gonna who are willing to put their lives on the line. It's just that we don't have the political organization or will to get that together, and that's really what we got to work on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
So,
that's what I.
Justin, I guess look you up on Facebook, and you're on Twitter sometimes too, right?
Yeah, you're gonna see me on Twitter for another month because I got another month ban. I was back on Facebook for like a week, and I got after being on ban, and now I'm back on ban again because
Yeah.
I can't censor. I have no ability to self censor. I just I forget that some things you can't say on.
Yeah. Well, you should join Upscroll.
Oh, okay. I'll check that out. I'm sorry, we didn't even touch on that, I guess, but I've been hearing about that, and yeah, I might check that out. I've also been on I've been on Red Note for a while too, which is the Chinese app. I would definitely suggest checking that. It's interesting because
I'm going to do that. I'm going to
yeah,
go and
it
check
it
them out.
it it really. I'm sorry, I don't want to go too far over, but it really lays to rest a lot of stereotypes about China being this everyone cringing in the state of authoritarian repression, where uh, I mean, I've seen literally trans people on Red Note, talking this about their experiences being Chinese and trans. I've seen uh, Chinese punk bands. I mean, it's China is not the dystopian wasteland that U.S. propaganda is making it out to be, and just the fact that they have a Red Note, which is their equivalent of TikTok, should tell you right off the bat a lot of that's bullshit. Because I would definitely. I'm gonna check out Upscroll, but I would definitely say check out Red Note too, because it really puts to rest a lot of the 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 notions about China. But
Uh,
listen, on that note, I do have to go. I gotta get myself together. Like I said, got a
Dinner.
early Valentine's Day dinner with the fiance. So
You and your fiance, you have a good dinner, and we'll talk soon.
yeah,
All right.
take care, man.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye. Okay, that was Justin Addeo, and he's up in Michigan. So, just talked for about an hour and all that, and known him for years, and I just thought I had him on the show today and all. So, let me talk to y'all here on the chat line, and I myself will have to grab a bite to eat very soon as well. So we have Miguel. How are you doing? And we have Daniel Berry Sports Highlight. Happy Wednesday, sup guys? Hold on a second. Let's see. Do that. We have Max RJ. I hear Uncle Warren snoring in the background. I think he's here. I think he's here now. We have here Chuck, a UFO show, Chuck Intergalactic UFO show, rather. Tariffs are taxes on your own people. Orange Whippler is an economic dimwit. And he's not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree. Donald Trump is not, for sure. We have Snipe Hunter, otherwise known as College Buddy. How are you doing today? We have here. Okay, put on the sunglasses. They live. What's not? They live or what's not fiction. All right. Elected politics. That's adorable, and I am cynical about electoral politics. I do have a preference for 2028, but I know that the person I want to run in 2028 will not win because it'll be in a third party, and and he might be perceived as polarizing, but uh, I say Brianna Joy Gray. If somebody knows her, let her know she needs to run. All right. Freeze wave in New York. Is that what's happening? I hopefully we'll get some more snow down here in North Carolina. Let's see. Hi everyone. Wednesday, Mercury Day. Happy Wednesday. It says 32732. All right. And green is the only option for those with a moral compass. I'm a registered green, so I vote accordingly for the Greens. Of the major party candidates in the last 10 years, yeah, Bernie's was the best, and I still say that. However, Bernie he's going to retire, and I think that maybe he needs to retire at this point. So. Butch Ware, I endorse Butch Ware for governor of California. He's running for the Green Party. Let's see here. And what's happened to Maduro and his wife is unthinkable. United States government, being what it is. CBC voter, how are you doing today? All right. It's not even doing that. They're building a containment facilities that they were doing they were going to do mass deportation. Why would they need those? That's true too, very true. And a lot of that shit they're doing is so unnecessary. And I didn't get a chance to discuss it. Maybe later on we'll discuss that when he comes back on the show. Let's see. Some of the best workers we just got rid of. And that is true. There's a lot of hardworking immigrants in this country. They're perceived as freeloaders, and which is wrong as it can be. I agree. I also think many jobs are gone now. They need to have enough for desperate Americans. It's a whole distraction thing, There is no Mexican gang members. There's people that works for the chicken plant staff. Stuffing chicken and other labor-intensive jobs. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there are, but very minimal, or no more, no less than what you'll find in the United States. And they don't go after. That's not who they go after. They go after the majority who are mainstream and law-abiding and trying to get by. His base is smaller than he thinks. They're just really loud. Oh, the Trump base. Yeah, I would agree. I'm pretty sure, and they've gotten smaller as far as I'm concerned. I'm pretty sure he pays for the most. I'm pretty sure he pays for most of the people that hangs out with him and call his base. Yep. How you doing, Game.film? Warren, don't worry. Don't worry. Better late than never. I'm glad to see you here. Anonymous says hello all, and you're from England, so great seeing you here. We have take care, Justin says Snipe Hunter. All right, and hi Anonymous, and everybody saying hi back and exchanging the pleasantries and all. So. I don't know if I'll be doing a video tomorrow or Friday, but if I do, you'll see me here. You'll see thing announced and all that. So I am going to grab a bite to eat, and I should have a guest. I'm trying to have a guest every week now. That is my goal this year, is to have a guest once a week on the Willy Bragg Show. So that would I'm working on one right now, so I'll still trying to negotiate and all that. So anyway, if you like what you heard, please press like and comment. Comment any ways you disagree with what I have to say. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share any content I have here on this channel. As a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we are, in fact, the muckrakers of our time. Subscribe to the Willy Bragg Show on YouTube and any other platform that I happen to be on. And remember to free Nicolas Maduro, because he's a political prisoner. Free Palestine, because they're a political prisoner of they're political prisoners in a population. Free healthcare for all, because the insurance companies and the private medical industrial complex keep us all prisoners. And to keep our First Amendment free, because they're trying to criminalize us for what we have to say, and we have the damnedest right to say what we need to say. So y'all take care, and until next time, fuck ICE. Y'all take care. I will talk to y'all later. Bye-bye. Good night, folks.